Hello, I'm Miranda, and joining me later in the presentation is Brooke, Ariam, Sydney, and Presley, and we are looking to strengthen your knowledge of the idea of confidentiality. By the end, we hope to have explained the importance of meeting confidentiality in a workplace setting, what happens when someone does not uphold confidentiality, and some instances when confidentiality was compromised in the aftermath. We also look to inform you of the future direction to keep confidentiality in place and to limit violations. So what is confidentiality? Confidentiality is a concept all of us have experienced in life, and as a great deal of people enter the healthcare field and fulfill healthcare jobs, it is beneficial to know what exactly it is and how we can uphold confidentiality in our day-to-day lives and our future careers. Confidentiality is known as the process of keeping information or important details of any sort secret, as a means of maintaining a relationship of trust between individuals. With that being said, confidentiality is not only seen in healthcare, but can be applicable to any situation in which one individual or party desires that the information that they share with another individual or party be kept private. Confidentiality is nothing new that healthcare professionals or anybody has to learn in its entirety when they start a job. The idea of keeping things secret starts when we are kids. You make friends in school or at the park and you share secrets and you pinky promise not to tell anyone else. These pinky promises are essentially a metaphor between healthcare facilities and their patients. Think of times when you have gone to the doctor's office as a kid or even now as adults. Were there measures that were taken that let you know it was not going to be easy to access health records and medical history from someone that is not you? Of course there were. They ask you for identification, your health insurance card if you have one, and a whole list of other questions to ensure you are who you say you are before they provide confidential information. Every individual is able to consider their options for care, just like how kids pick who they want to be friends with. They pick which option, or in the case of our analogy, which friend is best for them, and they pursue their option of choice with the hope that any and all care they receive and any and all information they provide will be kept private. Nobody outside of who you trust with your health records and medical history should know your medical statuses or personal information. Confidentiality can be applied to numerous, if not all, aspects of healthcare. Any bit of important and personal information you share with healthcare professionals is kept secret by the laws instituted through the Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA.
My name's Presley, and I'm going to be talking about HIPAA and the consequences of violating HIPAA policies. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, also known as HIPAA, is what protects our medical records from being seen by anyone and everyone. The main goals of HIPAA are to address the disclosure and the use of patient information within the healthcare systems, and under this act, people are able to control their rights and get a better understanding of how exactly their information is used to help not only physicians but help the patients as well. One of the other major things that HIPAA does is that it helps to ensure that patients' information is protected and used in the correct ways. When it comes to violating the rules of HIPAA, the consequences are not something that should be taken lightly. The top consequences that you'll usually see of HIPAA violations are financial penalties, loss of income or Medicare payments, termination of employment contracts, criminal charges, and sanctions. And while these aren't the only possible consequences for violating HIPAA, these 5 are the ones that you'll see happen most often within the healthcare system. Another important thing to know about HIPAA is that all healthcare organizations or practices are required to have a HIPAA officer, and the privacy officer must ensure the implementation and maintenance of privacy policies and procedures regarding safe and protected use of protected health information. And here we have the responsibilities of HIPAA privacy officers, one being updated about federal and state laws, delivering HIPAA privacy training to all employees. We have performing privacy risk assessments and compliance monitoring, implementing procedures for receiving documentation and investigations regarding HIPAA and possible violations, establishing a process for tracking protected health information throughout the systems, ensuring that employees are complying with HIPAA regulations, and developing and monitoring business associate agreements to ensure HIPAA violations and compliance. And then the last one we have here is cooperating with legal entities in the case of violations or other things that could happen.
Hi, my name is Brooke and I will be discussing HIPAA violation fines and punishments. Penalties are intended to prevent the violation of HIPAA laws while also ensuring the violators are held accountable for their actions. When it comes to protecting the privacy of patients and confidentiality of health data, it is best to provide patients with access to their health records only if they want you to do so. The penalty structure for a violation of HIPAA is determined by the act and how serious the outcome of the violation is. It also considers how long the violation occurred for, the number of people that were affected, and the nature of data exposed. There are 4 categories used for the penalty structure, which are identified in tiers. Tier 1 is unaware of the violation and could not have realistically been avoided, even with reasonable amount of care. The first tier is a violation, or the second tier is a violation that covered entity should have been aware of, but not have been avoided, even with reasonable amount of care. The third tier is a violation suffered as a direct result of willful neglect of HIPAA rules in cases where an attempt has been made to correct the violation. The fourth tier is a violation of HIPAA rules consisting willful neglect where no attempt has been made to correct the violation. Civil penalties for HIPAA violations start at $100 per violation by an individual who violates HIPAA rules. The fine can raise to $25,000 if there have been multiple violations of the same type. These penalties are applied when the individual was aware that the HIPAA rules that were violated or should have been aware. If there was no willful neglect of HIPAA rules and the violation was corrected within 30 days from when the employee knew that the HIPAA rules had been violated, civil penalties will not apply. The criminal penalties for HIPAA violations can be severe. The minimum fee is $50,000. The maximum criminal penalty for a HIPAA violation by an individual is $250,000. If the healthcare professional knowingly obtains or uses protected health information for reasons that are not permitted, they may be found to be criminally liable for the HIPAA violation. There have been several instances where criminal penalties have been faced with healthcare professionals and hospitals. For example, a formal patient information coordinator at UPMC was charged for violating HIPAA in 2018. The coordinator used her position to obtain PHI, which is protected health information, on 111 individual patients. The former worker was faced with up to 11 years in prison. In addition, another employee was suspended for a HIPAA violation at another hospital facility. The employee took a list of more than 3,000 patients' information in her former workplace, and when the employee switched job locations, she brought the patient's information with her without getting approval. The list included patients' names, addresses, date of birth, and diagnosis. Doing so is considered a breach of data that could have been prevented in the higher-ups if the hospitals had known.
Taking a closer look at the table, you can see penalties become more and more serious depending on the extent of willful neglect at hand. Even in an instance where an individual is unaware that he or she is violating HIPAA as seen in Tier 1, the fine can still be upwards of $50,000. With that being said, there is a maximum of $25,000 a year for Tier 1, and the preceding tiers are even more. Overall, the maximum violation cost allowed is $1.5 million per year. Regardless of intentional or unintentional harm, it is without a doubt a very serious offense to compromise health records and personal information. All steps possible should be taken to ensure HIPAA regulations are always followed.
South. In a statement filed today with the Securities and Exchange Commission, CHS said the company has confirmed that this data did not include patient credit card, medical, or clinical information, but it goes on to say that it includes patient names, addresses, birth dates, telephone numbers, and social security numbers. Information security experts like DePaul University's Jean-Philippe Lebrouillet say attacks like this one are growing increasingly common.
Those attacks can come from lots of different places, and they do not discriminate against any possible target. Any company is a possible target for those attacks.
CHS says the attack took place during April and June. The SEC statement says the company's security expert believes the attacker was an advanced persistent threat group originating from China.
It depends on the attacker. It could be industrial secret, it could be plans, components for parts. It could be also just patient information or financial information, credit card, personal information in order to do frauds or identity theft.
Lebrouillet says companies need to be on guard, but it is difficult to stop an organized cyber attack on its data.
The attacks are very asymmetrical. For a company to successfully protect itself, it must protect each and every one of its components. For an attacker to be successful, it only needs to mitigate one component. So companies can protect themselves. The cost of protections are very high, and there's always a gap.
As we just saw in the news clip, health facilities are more vulnerable to cyber breaches than most other sectors, and this is due to internet weaknesses and security. Health facilities are the most targeted sector globally, most likely because their systems possess large amounts of data and information that could be profitable if sold. Attacks are only becoming increasingly common, as in 2021, 45 million individuals were affected by healthcare attacks, up from 34 million in 2020. This is a difference of 11 million in just 1 year, and as much as I would like to say that it's going to get better, realistically it can grow to be even worse if hackers find even more ways to compromise data and healthcare information. Information that could be obtained includes, but is not limited to, birth dates, social security numbers, medication, whether it be currently used or previously needed, and much more. 50% of healthcare providers claim they do not feel comfortable defending against the cybersecurity breach. Cyber safety training is not what healthcare providers plan for when they go into the medical field, hence the reason why there is usually a team of people in place to do it for them. There is no way of knowing where the most sensitive areas of security are until they have already been attacked. From there, security can be adjusted, but in most cases it is too late. Any bit of information that is leaked that is not supposed to be is still a loss of security and confidentiality. There are two main reasons for vulnerability, which are in the fact that health facilities are a source with valuable data, as mentioned before, and they are also a soft target. It is not for certain how far attackers can reach with their harmful software. With everything considered, though, it makes sense that it is so common for cybersecurity attacks to happen, whether we plan on them happening or not. Sadly, someone you know has most likely been a victim of cybersecurity attack. Let's think about it.
Hello everyone, I'm Sydney and I'm going to be talking about real life circumstances of HIPAA violations and confidentiality. As of 2020, 32% of the US population was affected by HIPAA violations. That means that out of 10 people you know, 3 have been affected. Think about if you know anyone who has been impacted. You may not, but if you can't think of anyone, let me enlighten you on a few people you may know that were actually affected. I'm sure most people know of Britney Spears. In 2008, Britney was admitted into the University of California, Los Angeles Medical Center for psychiatric care. After Ms. Spears entered the hospital, the chief compliance and privacy officer of the medical service building sent out a memo to all hospital staff reminding them of HIPAA policies. Some staff must have missed the memo because 13 employees were fired as a result of snooping into the celebrity's medical records. This is the second time that Britney Spears' medical records were breached, the first being after the birth of her son. According to the director of human resources at the time, celebrities often get treated at this hospital with no issue, but Ms. Spears was a continuous target for data breaches, and this resulted in 13 of those employees getting fired. Surprisingly, or probably not, the UCLA Medical Center is notorious for medical record breaches. Just before the incident previously explained, George Clooney experienced a similar situation in 2007. Mr. Clooney was in a motorcycle accident with his significant other. During his hospital stay, 27 employees of the hospital were suspended without pay for accessing his medical records without reasonable cause. In July of 2013, Kim Kardashian was admitted into the hospital to give birth to her first son. A month after the hospital stay, they announced that 6 employees were fired during this time period. All of these staff members were being punished for accessing Kim Kardashian's medical records. After Michael Jackson's death in 2010, his death certificate gained over 300 views. In result, 4 employees from the medical center were fired. The hospital also faced $95,000 in fines. Another example happened after Prince's death in 2016. TMZ gained information from the hospital that drugs were given to Prince to reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. Although no punishment came out of the situation, officials questioned the validity and the source of the information. A similar situation occurred after Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019. The news of Jeffrey's alleged suicide was leaked 38 minutes before the initial news was announced. This statement led news sources to believe an employee inside the prison or the hospital leaked the information first. This also resulted in no punishment, but still qualifies as a severe HIPAA violation. Celebrity medical breaches are a huge problem in today's health system. However, celebrities are not the only people affected. Every single day, patients are victims of HIPAA violations. No matter the severity, these situations impact the patient to an extent that no one can comprehend until they experience it also. Even if a staff member breaches medical records of a person who is not famous, the punishment remains just as severe and just as equal. Medical and non-medical staff participating in these breaches suffer lifelong changing consequences that make continuing their career extremely difficult. In just the situations previously explained about the celebrities, 50 employees were fired. Now take into consideration that 32% of American individuals have been affected. Hundreds of thousands of hospital staff are fired from those situations. If you ask these employees if breaking the pinky promise we call confidentiality was worth finding out a little bit about a celebrity's mental or even physical health, I bet you they would regret their actions. Maybe kids on the playground would take pinky promises more seriously if they found out breaking one could cost them their job.